That's it. Whoops, wait a second. Okay. All right, so we are, we're on page 304, if I'm not mistaken, right? And we are talking about the wrestling of Jacob with the mysterious being that happened at night. This was from the previous page, because that night is the time of Seir. The being says, let me go, release me, because now it's daybreak. Daytime is not my time. And he says, no, you have to bless me. But the way the Zohar reads it is not that you have to bless me, because they're reading this as the figure, the opponent is Saro Shel Esav, the prince, the officer who is the celestial force empowering Esav, but rather that Esav has to confirm the blessing that he already received, and Esav has to agree and submit to the blessing. And that's the that's what Israel succeeds in doing, right? So that's the agreement that he wrestles and rests out of Esav's side, and that's why he's called Yisrael. So I think we are we're in the middle of 304. For Sarita, you have striven with Elohim. This is the explanation of why the name Yisrael is appropriate for Jacob. So I invite somebody to please do the honor of reading, the service of reading. And all right, Beryl, good with the reflexes. All right.
So to begin with Sarita?
Yeah,
okay.
Sarita. For Sarita, for you have striven.
For Sarita, you have striven with Elohim. What does this mean with Elohim? Do you imagine he was referring to himself? Rather, he told him, you have striven to join and couple with Elohim in coupling of sun and moon. Therefore, it is not written above Elohim, but rather with Elohim in a single bond and coupling.
All right. So what we usually understand the message to be is that you have wrestled here with me, and I am a representative of Elohim. I'm an angel, and you've wrestled and prevailed. But that's not the understanding that the Zohar reads into the verse. After all, again, the wrestler, the force that is wrestling, that is encountering Jacob, is actually Esav's power, but rather it's a general acknowledgement about who Jacob has always been. Not this wrestling match per se is the wrestling that's referred to, but Jacob's wrestling all the time. And unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to prepare the visuals, but the wrestling between the angel, the being, and Jacob has been pictured by artists throughout time, and they have chosen different ways. Obviously, different artists do things differently, but they've imagined the wrestling match in various kinds of images, and some of the images show a battle. They show a real fight, but other images, and this is, I think, very true to any images that people have seen of wrestling. Wrestling can really look very much like an embrace. and very much like almost like lovemaking. I mean, it's super, super close contact between two bodies that are entwined with each other. You know, if they're wrestling on the ground, they're rolling around together. And the act of making love is often a wrestling match for some lovers. So the image of the wrestling is here pushed by the Zohar into that avenue. Also, I remember in the old days, there was a very well-known artist. Now he's a little bit forgotten, Francis Bacon. But Francis Bacon was an expressionist kind of artist who combined abstract and figuration elements in his paintings, and he was gay, and he would paint wrestlers as a kind of a cover for a homoerotic picture. So the idea of wrestling can definitely have that kind of meaning. And what the Zohar says here is that you are wrestling to bring Shekhinah and God to be unified with each other. That's the wrestling. The wrestling has to do with coupling. You've striven to join and couple with Elohim. Elohim is another word for Shekhinah. In coupling of sun and moon. Moon is Shekhinah, and sun is Kudsha B'richu, the Holy Blessed One. And that is also a name, if you look back at the diagram at the beginning of your volume, that's Jacob. And Jacob is the sun. So when we have this wrestling match, and the sun is about to shine, that's Jacob emerging victorious, right? And we have the identification of the sun as an erotic power in Psalms, right? That in one of the Shabbat Psalms, we have V'hu kechatan yotzei michupato yatziski gibor larutz orach. Whatever it is, Psalm, I forgot, whatever, 90 or whatever.
19.
19, you sure? You sure that's what it is? No offense, but I just want to check it myself. I can never remember the numbers of the Psalms, except for 23.
Shemayim Saprim Kavod.
That's it, yes, 19, that's the one. Good. Shkoach. Right, so that's how it begins, right? Right. Lashemesh sam ohel bahem v'hu kechatan yotzei michupato. Right, that the sun that is overarching over everything goes out from the sky like an exultant, triumphant bridegroom. So here also, this is Jacob's striving. Jacob's striving is not this momentary wrestling with this opponent, but actually the opposite. It's a striving with his lover. It's a striving with Shekhinah. Okay. Therefore, it doesn't say you have striven over and triumphed over Elohim, but Hisarita im Elohim, right? It's a mutually reinforcing striving together. Okay, in a single bond and coupling. Okay, good. Any comments? Okay, we continue.
Alternatively, he said, as is written, he said, if you listen carefully to the voice of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God. Here too, he said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel. Then Jacob was crowned with his rung, becoming consummation of the patriarchs. What is written? He blessed him there, confirming all those blessings bestowed by his father.
Okay, so who's the he is the question. When it says, he said, you have striven with God, who is this he? Right, so the answer is, well, let's look at where another place where we have a he said, and we can figure it out. Right, so that's the verse from the book of Exodus, where God is speaking and says God should be listened to. So, but which part of God is speaking? So if you look in note 3.8.
As is written, he said, if you listen carefully, the anonymous subject of this verse from Exodus is understood to be Shekhinah, who calls attention to Tiferet, known as Yud-He Vav-He. Similarly, here in Genesis, Shekhinah, not the angel who named Jacob.
Right. So instead of thinking about this as being Saro Shel Esav or some kind of celestial agent, messenger, no, it's really Shekhinah herself. We call Shekhinah she, but Shekhinah could be also he, because God is all one. And therefore, a lot of times when we say he, it could also be she. So if you listen to Yud He Vav He, this is Shekhinah, right, who is saying, I, Elohim, are telling you, listen to Kudsha B'richu, listen to Tiferet, listen to the other part of the divine. So over here, the speaker is not Saro Shel Esav. The speaker alternatively is Shekhinah herself, right? And this is Jacob was crowned with his rung, becoming consummation of the patriarchs. Okay, so what does that mean? What does that mean that Jacob is consummation of the patriarchs? If you want to say something, Larry, you have to unmute.
Well, I was thinking it's like thesis, antithesis, synthesis, that Abraham is chesed or ahava, and Yitzchak is gevura or yira, and then they seem to be opposite, or they are opposites, but or two opposite portions of God or faces of God. But then in Yaakov, they achieve a synthesis.
Okay, so good. That's the understanding that we have, and that's the tracking that we have when we look at that diagram. Do we say and the word synthesis, is that a culmination idea? Culmination, right, to me signifies the final, reaching of the best of what could be, right? The consummation, right, is the end goal, right, of the whole process. So we've had this before in the Zohar. We've had this again and again, that Abraham and Isaac, as important and as essential as they are paving the way for Yaakov. Yaakov is the real deal. So and of course, sometimes we're called Bnei Avraham. Very rarely are we called Bnei Yitzchak. When we say in the morning prayers, Zera Yitzchak Yechido. We don't say the child, we say the seed of Isaac, right? And then we are the children of, literally the children of Jacob. We are Bnei Yisrael. That's what our corporate identity is. That's our brand name. So Abraham and Isaac in some way paved the way for Yaakov. and Yaakov is the consummation. With all of our troubles with Yaakov as a complicated figure, this is something for us to wrestle with, right? That it's not Abraham. Wouldn't we love Abraham to be our consummation? Wouldn't we love that pure, just unending loving to be the most important sign of who we are? And yet that's not the mantle that we carry. We carry a mantle that requires Abraham to be filtered through Isaac and then filtered through Jacob. Abraham is filtered to the extent that he also pours through Ishmael. Right? Abraham is Ishmael's father equally as he is Isaac's father. But to get to Jacob, we have filter Abraham through Isaac and not Ishmael. Right? And then and Jacob is understood to be the consummation. There's another aspect of this sentence that might bear a little bit of thought, and that is that this is Shekhinah crowning Kudsha B'richu. Right? This is the way that Jacob becomes the consummation of the patriarchs, which ends up putting him in that central location around which all of the godly potencies revolve. He gets put there by Shekhinah, who endows him with that blessing. Right? Shekhinah is the one who confirms or blesses, either blesses or confirms the blessing, that then assures and certifies Jacob as being that core, most perfect expression of the aspects of God, the total expression, without leaving anything out. That total expression is being established for us by Shekhinah. So even though on the simplistic level, Yaakov is here, Shekhinah is there. You can see in the frame, in my frame here, that's right. Yaakov up here, Shekhinah down here. But Yaakov is up there because Shekhinah puts him up there. And this is part of the coupling, the result of the coupling, right? The result of the coupling, which in many ways is, as it says here, a single bond, a single union. In the end, that single unification of Shekhinah and Yaakov ends up becoming bifurcated and made into a hierarchical relationship. Shekhinah endows Yaakov with the status of the one who will be, the one to listen to. When Shekhinah says in bottom of 304, if you listen carefully, right? You have to listen to, I'm looking for my chat thing. You have to listen to Kudsha B'richu. You have to listen to Jacob. So now I have a question here in the chat. How does this modify the relation between God in the world and God as the unknowable? Okay, so that's a simple question to answer. Anybody here could answer it, right? There's a joke. There's a joke story that the Baal Shem Tov used to want to travel around without people knowing that it was the Baal Shem Tov who was in their midst. And he had a balagula. He had a wagon driver, and now I'm forgetting his name. He had a name. They gave him a name, and now I'm forgetting what his name was. But he had the faithful, his Sancho Panza kind of guy. He had his faithful wagon driver who drove him around. And the story goes that the Baal Shem Tov, when they were about to get close to a town, so he says to his balagala, to his wagon driver, he says, "Okay, switch. Let's do a little switcheroo, and I'll be the balagala, and you'll be the holy rabbi, and this way they won't know who I am." So they come into the town, and everybody sees, oh, look, it's the holy Baal Shem Tov who's come into the town, and they all crowd around. And the balagala, who's taken to be the holy rabbi, is getting a little nervous by all of this adulation and attention. And just what he fears happens. Somebody comes forward and says, holy rabbi, how do we explain the relation between the hidden God and the knowable God? Right? I'm taking Mark's question. He asks some question. This person asks of the holy rabbi, please tell me the answer. So he's asking the balagala. He's asking the wagon driver who's in the disguise. So the balagala's heart sinks. What am I going to do? And then inspiration. He says, such a question, even my wagon driver could answer that question. And he says, you answer the question. So that's the story, right? So Mark, you're asking a question. Are you kidding? Anybody in this group could answer this question. So I'm opening it up to any answers that anybody else has. All right. Meanwhile, I'll make my getaway with the wagon, and that's it. So does this modify the relation? I think to be very precise, and precision is good. Sometimes precision doesn't really answer questions, but sometimes precision can help a little bit. The dichotomy that you're talking about of between God in the world and God as the unknowable, it's not quite accurate, because Kudsha Barichu is not the unknowable. Yaakov is not the unknowable because Yaakov is Yaakov. None of God as the unknowable could be incarnated by Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob. God as the unknowable comes before Abraham. If we want to be schematic about it, just to keep it easy, the three manifestations that are at the top of the spherotic diagram, that's God, that's unknowable. That's Keter, Chochma, Bina. Once we get to Chesed, that's already the lower 7 sphirot. And those are, and of course it's a big joke because, we're saying the knowable God. Baloney. What am I saying when I say that? But nevertheless, it's all relative. And in terms of the idea of quote unquote knowability, what we can talk about, whether what we're saying is worth anything or not, is actually starts with Chesed, with Abraham. And it's not a coincidence, because that's the whole idea. The whole idea is the human being carrying, literally, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and David, who is Shekhinah, are the Merkava. They're the ones who carry the chariot. They are the ones that carry the divine into the world. So that divine that they're carrying is in a very important, serious way, sense. That's God in relation with the world. So the fact that Shekhinah sort of elevates Yaakov to that place doesn't quite break the ceiling into the unknowable. Now I'm reading the next question. Okay, So let me rephrase. Where is the work to be done? Here or there? So you're going to have to rephrase again. Where's the there? You know what Gertrude Stein said about Philadelphia.
Yeah, right. Okay, so still in all,
Just to make it clear for everybody else, she said there is no there.
what I mean by there is the Kuchabricho.
Right. Right. So
I didn't know how to spell it.
what work are we talking about?
I'm not sure, but there is work to be done. Because the reason is because I keep on misreading the tense in Adon Olam, right?
What?
I keep on reading it as if the work is not done, whereas in the English translation, which is the only thing I can do, it says when the work was completed. But I do that on purpose, right? So the work isn't done. It's that thing I said a couple of sessions ago, that we're still in the sixth day. Still isn't Shabbos, right? So where is that work done? Is that work done with religion on earth? Or is that work done with whatever it is that we can manage to of the transcendental nature? Although I don't want to go all the way up, I mean, my trouble is I can't pronounce Hebrew words and I can't spell complicated words. So sometimes I misphrase.
It's all right. That's why you're a philosopher.
Right.
Yeah. So, but
I
so
make
let's try. I mean, okay. So I'm making a lot of jokes because when you get to hard questions, then you need to get out of it by making jokes. These are hard questions. These are fundamental questions, and it's not a question that has the answer here. The answer is, again, in the most profound sense as well as the most superficial sense. The answer is yes. The answer is both. What we just had a second ago is the picture of Jacob, which most of us, most of the time, do not have as our immediate picture of Jacob. Jacob is the one who wrestles with keeping a unification between the Kutchabrichu and Shekhinah. That's what we had right before, right? That wrestling about uniting Kutchabrichu with Shekhinah. And who is doing this? This is Jacob. But then Jacob isn't just Jacob. Jacob is Kutchabrichu himself, right? So, and this is the paradox, and this is the simultaneous mystery that I keep on, harking back to again and again, that this dichotomy keeps on collapsing. This dualism, the Zohar keeps on insisting as being, in the end, united, mysteriously as it may be. And as hard as we have to grasp for that unity, the unity must be affirmed. And the back and forth between heaven and earth is constant.
But
so where is the work? The work happens both ways.
I didn't do this gratuitously, Rabbi. I did it because of the phrase that you used in the interpretation of the sentence, that Shekhinah crowns the Kutchabrichu.
Right.
Now that really puts the work essentially here.
Yes, yes and no. It's here, but when we do that work reverberates above. That's what when we're doing the unification work is so that above, the one God will be healthy enough, to use a kind of maybe a kind of a crasser way of thinking of it, healthy enough to shower blessings back into our world. That's the circle that happens. The world comes into being from God pouring forth God's own energy to create that world. That creation, as we've talked about many times, is a paradox. Because on the one hand, it's a pouring forth, it's a giving, it's a establishing of a relationship. On the other hand, there's a certain, as became famous from Luria, there's a certain disengagement that is created because the union that was there before creation was an unproblematic union. God was completely whole. and united. So the fact that God ends up becoming a God of relationship weakens to a certain extent, as the Zohar would say, kiviyachol, as it were. I should be pardoned talking these ways, but that's the only way I can talk, and human beings in general. In a certain sense, it compromises or weakens God as God. And then our work is the strengthening or the rehabilitation, the recuperation of God. But we have a tremendous stake in that recuperation, because if there is no recuperation, there's not going to be us. But if we do it for selfish reasons, we won't help God recuperate. So there's the yin and the yang in the paradox.
So the dispute always has to be for God.
Absolutely. If it's not, if the dispute is not l'shem shamayim, then ein sofa kayem. Then the end will not endure. Right? Will come to nothing.
Thank you.
No, thank you for setting it all up like that. Good. All right. Rabbi Shimon, yes? Good. Errol.
Rabbi Shimon opened, when a man's ways please Yud-He Vav-He, he causes even his enemies to be at peace with him. Come and see how carefully one should align his paths toward the Blessed Holy One in order to fulfill the commands of Torah. For they have established that a person really has two angelic messengers from above to couple with him, one on the right and one on the left, coupling with him, appearing wherever he does anything, called good impulse and evil impulse.
Okay, so 1 second, just for a half a second. So we have here, again, a kind of a back and forth a little bit in this last part of the paragraph. On the one hand, the person really has two angelic messengers to couple with him. So that recalls the famous image that we have on Friday night when we sing Shalom Aleichem, right? And we talked about that. We brought it up, I think, last time or the time before, right? The beautiful image of, but it's definitely a folk image. Whether it's beautiful is up to people's decisions. That when a person walks home from shul or walks back into their home on Shabbat, so the two angels, one is a good angel, one is a bad angel, and they're watching to see, are the Shabbos candles lit in the home? And if there are, then the bad angel, which was hoping that there wouldn't be, has to affirm the blessing, right? That's when we used it the other time, and say, okay, good, let it be this way next week. And if there are no Shabbos candles lit in the home, then the good angel who was hoping that the Shabbos candles would be there is crestfallen, and the bad angel is delighted. And the good angel has to say, well, may it be this way next week, you win. So this is the idea of these two angels that are accompanying the person. But then, by the end of the paragraph, those two angels are internalized within the human being. They are the Yetzer HaTov and the Yetzer Hara, right? And they are coupled with him. They are part and parcel of him. They are united as one flesh. So that those forces, each Yetzer, each impulse is highly charged. Each impulse is very powerful, like an angel. And each one of them is housed within us and coupled, not just housed, coupled with us. Okay, let's see what happens.
If one comes to purify himself and engage in commands of Torah, that good impulse coupled with him overpowers the evil impulse, who then makes peace with him, turning into his servant. But when a person relapses, setting out to defile himself, that evil impulse overpowers and overwhelms the good impulse, as we have established. Indeed, when that person comes to purify himself, how potently he is empowered as the good impulse prevails. Then he causes his enemies to be at peace with him, for that evil impulse is overturned by the good impulse. Therefore Solomon said, better to be lightly esteemed and have a servant. What does this mean, and have a servant? The evil impulse. So when a person follows the commands of Torah, he causes even his enemies to be at peace with him, the evil impulse.
Okay, so better to be lightly esteemed. Just get the rest of the verse, please. 343.
Better to be lightly esteemed and have a servant. The verse continues, than to be self-important and lack food.
Okay, so that's why we know that the lightly esteemed is good, right? Lightly esteemed, not to be concerned with oneself so much. I don't care what other people think. And yet, nevertheless, I have a servant. How could you have a servant if you're a nobody? The answer is your evil impulse is your servant. Your evil impulse has been subdued and brought under control and lives at peace with you. Does anybody want to reflect on this whole teaching? Now the Zohar, as it does so often, it goes out of the mythic, out of Jacob and the divine realm, and the celestial forces, and it just talks about plain you and me, right? And our own wrestling and our own struggles. So does any of this resonate? Is this a partial truth, a whole truth? Is it a lot of BS? How do people feel about this stuff? Since none of us ever have a problem with our evil impulse, we're really sort of like stymied about how to relate to this. So it's a problem. I know it doesn't really.
I think of it a little bit like short-term and long-term, immediate gratification, feel good versus okay, but there's something bigger out there. So that's how that makes sense to me a little bit.
What are the salient characteristics by the use of that proof text? What are the salient characteristics if we have that as our guide to understand things? What are the salient characteristics of the good impulse and the evil impulse? And what I'm saying is it's not just simply the good impulse makes us do the Torah's commandments, and the bad impulse tells us not to do Torah's commandments. That's not a good enough answer. What is this particular proof text? And I would imagine there could have been zillions of other proof texts that could have been chosen. But this verse, I'm going to read it one more time. Or no, Beryl, come on, you're our designated reader. Read the whole verse, please. What's cited in the Zohar, and then the completion in 343.
If one comes to purify himself and engage in commands.
No, you don't have to read the whole paragraph. Sorry. Read from therefore Solomon said. You see where it is?
Therefore Solomon said, better to be lightly esteemed and have a servant. What does this mean?
And what's the rest of the verse?
Better to be lightly esteemed and have a servant. The verse continues, than to be self-important and lack food.
Okay, so if we just use that as our clue, hint, right, for how do we understand what it means to be in accordance with a good impulse, and what does it mean to be in accord with the evil impulse?
It sounds like you're saying you have to abandon your ego to a large degree. For your good impulse, you You don't think so much of yourself. It's not all about you. It's about, there's a whole world out there. But with
Right,
the
so
evil
what-
impulse, it's all you.
I'll do it now.
So what, yeah. So what Seth was saying before is just be, think about not just the moment. Think about not just, think about that long-term, short-term, but now we get a little bit of another piece thrown in, right? It's not just about now versus a bigger picture, but it's also about me versus a bigger picture. Yeah, Seth.
Well, yeah, to me, the immediate gratification, the short term is the immediate gratification. It's, that it's, how can I make a quick buck here? Let's go back and burn more coal. It's cheap. Let's, all the ways that we can, short term, make ends meet, gratification, etc. And, the bigger picture is more complex. It requires, an appreciation of things besides your own immediate need.
Doesn't this get us back to the conversation we just had, spurred by what Mark was asking? I think,
Yeah. I mean, the wholeness, right? I mean, that's where like these concepts of sustainability, sorry to be political and grounded in, whatever, but that's where I'm coming from. I mean, those concepts are hard. It's hard to communicate. It's hard to grasp that. It's hard to feel like I'm going to invest in this bigger thing called wholeness. And yet, it's easier to see a tree as a tree than to see a tree as a piece of a forest, right? As that beautiful Sunday New York Times story shared.
and the Richard Powers novel that's based on that person.
Exactly.
Unbelievable.
So this is
The
like, that's a
overstory.
hard concept. It's much easier to say, I'm going to get some wood from that tree. Here's how I'm going to understand that. Here's my relation to that. It's tough. It's really, that's the work maybe you and Mark were talking about.
So is it possible? All right, yeah, Larry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I'm just, maybe this is just my own psychology, but I'm seeing this more like if you put your own dignity or pride first, which I often do, then you may not solve the problem that you face or solve the life's challenges. And that solving the challenges involves a certain degree or a great degree of discipline. And the discipline may be suppression of your own, question of self-esteem in terms of, for the sake of resolving the problem that's at hand. And so that seems to be, to me, that's what the Zohar is hinting at, that you can make the Yetzer Hara into your servant, right? By not getting caught up in your own, as someone used the word, ego.
Is it possible to do all the good things of the Torah and the mitzvot and work for a sustainability campaign out of an evil impulse?
Yeah, if you do it for yourself.
Yeah, that's the toughie here, right? That yes, the unification and the bigger sense of beyond, but by framing it in this way, as opposed to saying keep Shabbos, that's the good impulse, or unite the Shechina with whatever, or give tzedakah. This is the hole that you can dig in for yourself, or even those things can be ego trips, and even those things can be an undermining rather than a building of this of this goal toward this goal. There's a phrase, a famous phrase among traditional students of the Torah and this whole point. The Torah tells us, be holy, for I am holy. Kedoshim tihiyu, ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokechem. For I am holy, the eternal, your almighty God. So that's the beginning of the Torah portion, Kedoshim, be holy. And that's the holiness, the heart of the holiness code in Leviticus. So Ramban, Nachmanides, says on that verse, he has a long discussion. What does it mean to be holy? What does that mean? He says, without this verse, it would be possible to be a naval b'shut Torah, a naval b'shut Torah. You can be a despicable person in the realm of the Torah, or with the permission of the Torah, right? I only eat kosher food, but you hoard all this kosher food, and all you do is just constantly run around trying to satisfy your endless appetites, and food can stand for anything, right? So you're not violating any rule, but you're just a selfish SOB. So Ramban says that would actually be possible. The entire system of the Torah has that one weakness, that telling you to do A and B and don't do C and don't do E, but do D and so on. All of that in the end doesn't make you into a holy person. You can do everything and be a schmuck, except finally when we have this commandment, be holy. It says once we have this commandment, then the entire system is protected. Because what this commandment is, this overarching meta commandment that says that it's holiness that you have to strive for when you do all these other things. So that, of course, still begs the question, so what's the holy?
Am I reading it backwards? But
What?
isn't servant and food on the good side?
Yeah.
Yeah. So your metaphor is sort of confusing the issue, because
Not
the
at all.
issue here is to know what's really important. And
The
what's
food-
really
the food-
important is servant and food.
No, that's not what the Zohar is reading.
So I'm reading it backwards.
You're reading it, I don't know how you're reading it. But the food is what we were talking about before. When you unite God as
Right.
a pure act of striving, then God sustains the world. God gives
Yeah,
the world food.
I didn't mean food in the sense of pastrami sandwiches. I
So
meant
that's
food
it.
in the sense of what's really important.
Correct.
So the issue is that you should sacrifice. It's what these other guys were saying. You should sacrifice your apparent psychological needs in order to know what's truly important.
Good. So that's a basic step in the right direction.
All right. Okay.
But the fact that I mentioned food as food, as being selfish, gluttonous, and so on, looking for the immediate gratification. But so can we formulate this idea of holiness in a different way? What's the positive formulation of holiness, as opposed to holiness is not being XYZ. So I've loved this teaching for many, many, many years, and if I could, I would just say this teaching every day. I've quoted it so many times. This is a teaching from Reb Shimon Shkop. And because of this teaching, as far as I'm concerned, Reb Shimon Shkop is my great, great, great teacher. He died in 1939. He was a great Talmudic scholar known for a tremendously subtle and sophisticated understanding of complicated Talmudic concepts. He was a Talmudist par excellence. He was called at the time Sar HaTorah, the Prince of the Torah. He was a Rosh Yeshiva. He was a person who taught Talmud, day and night and day and night. At the beginning of, I'm going to get you the book for a second. Indulge me. So this is the book, okay? This is my grandfather's copy of the book. This is not the book. This was stuck to the book. Here it is, okay? Sha'arei Yosher, gates of justice, gates of righteousness, of honesty. So it's a very thick, very, very, what can I say? Very, like I said, deep set of analyses of Talmudic concepts. But his introduction, he says, I want to talk about holiness. He says, what is this holy business? So, and in the book, he talks about monetary rights and torts and presumptions of fact and so on. In his introduction says, what's holiness? So he says, if holiness is only going to be understood as this negative idea that don't indulge too much, don't go overboard, don't do all that stuff, he says, how do we read the verse? The verse says, be holy, for I am holy. So he says, what's the connection? What's the relation? What's the relation between whatever knowable God there is and us, where holiness can have some kind of commonality? And he says, it seems to me that all of this business about holiness is being, related to asceticism and all that kind of stuff, that's symptomology. It's not the essence. The essence, he says, is holiness is to direct everything that you do for the sake of the whole, not for yourself. To do everything for the sake of what's beyond you. And that's what God did by creating the world. God is not tempted to eat a pastrami sandwich and says, no, I'm not going to do it because I need to be ascetic. I need to control myself. I need to stop indulging. He says, just understand what's the basic datum that we know about God, that God created the world. God created the world. God went out of God's self. God did something that God didn't need as God for God's self. And that's, God says, that's what's called holiness. So therefore, to be holy is to intend whatever we do in life to go beyond ourselves. Not to factor ourselves as the center, but to say, what can I do l'tovat haklal, for the benefit of the collective, for the benefit of everyone. So it brings together a lot of what people have said here tonight, what you've said, but he's saying this is of the essence of holiness. And that's where, let's take Shabbos. Mark said before, we're still in the 6 days, and that's part of the wisdom that we can glean from that first story. The first story is about God keeping Shabbos without any demand on any human beings to keep Shabbos. So Shabbos pre-exists a human institution of Shabbos. Shabbos is something more than that, or different. What is Shabbos? Shabbos is God refraining from messing with what God put outside of God. Shabbos is when God says, I did enough meddling. I did enough patchking with the world. The world looks pretty good. Now I'm going to step back and I'm going to rest, and I'm going to let the rest of the world be the world. And I'm not going to overpower or suffocate the world as I have until now. I have been the mover and shaker, literally, right? And now I'm not. I'm going to stop. And every other day, by the way, every other day of the days of creation, every other day is, we're told, ends. Right? The first day, ends, and a second day comes. The third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth. The sixth day ends. Right? Okay. There was the whole daily cycle happened, finished with the sixth day. And then we get a seventh day. Torah never says that the seventh day ended. Because as far as God is concerned, that act of Shabbos, as God's act of Shabbos, is fundamental to the continuation of the world. So even God's withdrawal is a withdrawal for the sake of the other, right? To make space for the other to be. And that's what Reb Shimon Shkop says, that's defined by the Torah as holiness. Yeah, David.
I'm listening to this and I think that there's a word in English for this, and that word is generosity. To be giving, to be loving, to be generous.
Right. So that's true, and yet that's not the same as chesed. Chesed is not the same, right? Chesed is what we generally understand as generosity and giving, and pouring forth the love. This is something that even overarches even the other side, even the left side. Yitzchak is created as part of that kedusha as well. Yitzchak is an expression of God's holy act of creation, even though Yitzchak is about judgment, limitation, withholding as well, but limitation and withholding for the sake of giving.
So it's about acceptance then of both sides, the side.
But acceptance sounds too passive to me. Right? This is what Reb Shimon is saying, is this is when God says Kedoshim to you, that's active. Do this, become holy, become a force that is driving for the sake of something that is not you.
But acceptance, to me, acceptance is a choice. So there's an active part.
Good. Okay.
Decide to be accepting.
Good. We're not going to exhaust this. I want to just look at the comment. Larry wrote in something. An example of being holy is doing something for your child, which your child wants and needs, even or especially if it is something that you neither want nor need. Okay, so this is something that some people can relate to, right? Where you're doing, you're accepting, you're giving in maybe to your child's demand or your child's request, even though you think it's narishkeit, right? Which means childishness, right? Childishness, foolishness, and yet nevertheless, out of love, you say, yeah, good. This is something that in any deep relationship with another human being, forget about a child, even among equals, this is something that happens, right? When the person that you're close to, a friend or a spouse or a partner or whatever, wants to do something or does something that's not up your alley. And nevertheless, to use David's term, you accept it. You accept it out of that kind of sense that we are one. It's not just me.
Rabbi?
A little piece of this.
There we go.
And that is that what's the and I unfroze. Good. Sorry, my internet connection is whatever it is. The picture that we have here, this kind of active and psychological picture of a human being making choices. In the end, there are three agents that are being referred to when any human choices being made. There's the good impulse. There's the evil impulse, right? But guess what else there is? There's a third player. Who's the third player?
Human being.
Yeah, right. Rich is correct. The human being. We are not reduced to our evil impulse and good impulse as being the components of our own identity, period. Look at the term, look at Beryl, you're back on.
Yes.
Can you please read again the beginning of that second paragraph? If one comes.
If one comes. If one comes to purify himself and engage in commands of Torah, that good impulse coupled with him overpowers the evil impulse, who then makes peace with him, turning into his servant. But when a person relapses, setting out to defile himself, that evil impulse overpowers and overwhelms the good impulse, as we have established.
Okay, so there it is. The person is deciding what they want to do, which path they want to walk, which direction they want to turn. And then the good impulse and the bad impulse react. So where is that other person? Where am I? Who am I? Who is the me that's making these decisions? Right?
Rabbi?
That's the picture that's being presented here that the Zohar has, is there's a pure me, and then I am coupled with these angelic forces that have been endowed, bestowed to me, these two impulses. But the two impulses, both good and evil, are actually not the essential me that makes the choices. Yeah, Rich.
Yeah, I don't know. This reminds me of something we've had many times of, I think, was it the prayer for the traveler? It just reminds me, I hear echoes about being prepared to take care of your physical needs before you venture out to deal with the world. If you want to travel with Shekhinah, you've got to satisfy your needs. In this case, they mentioned food, which I'm hearing echoes of satisfy your physical needs before you venture out, so as not to give in to temptation on the road for the traveler, or perhaps in your studies for, if you're studying Torah.
So your physical needs, thinking about taking care of that.
You're not about, no matter how lofty your task is, you've got physical needs that, if aren't addressed, could drag you easily off with temptation.
So that brings us back to the same question. Who's the you that could be dragged? Who's the you that has to decide to make sure that you have the physical needs taken care of? Are you reduced in this picture? Me is really just a physical being. And then I get these spiritual add-ons. Is that the idea? I don't quite think so. Yeah, Craig.
No, we are created in the image of God, but B'Tselem. That we have that free will. We're not animals, that just respond to instinct. We have the free will to choose what we want to do. We're told or early in the Cain and Abel story, sin crouches at the door, but you can master it. It doesn't say your good impulse can master it. You can do it.
Right.
I think we are and we aren't animals. We do have something more, but we've got strong physical things pulling us that require attention. And
so again, who's paying attention? Who is being required to pay attention?
The human being.
So what's the arsenal of stuff that makes up the human being if it's not the good impulse and the evil impulse?
I'm not following the question. I'm not getting the question.
We have a sense of self-awareness. We also have we have the capacity to, I'm going to use Kant's words because he's one of the few people that I've actually read in terms of philosophy. we have the power. We have the power to legislate for ourselves what we should and should not do. It's not being legislated from above. We have the power. Our will can legislate for itself the right things to do.
Right. So what I want to just highlight is that very, very often we think that the we is this bipolar idea. When we legislate for ourselves good things, it's because we're using our good impulse. And when we're legislating to do something bad for ourselves, when we choose to do something no good, we're using our evil impulse. Even when we say that famous teaching that I quoted a zillion times, love the Lord your God with all your heart. And it says, levavcha, with both your hearts, say the rabbis. Love the Lord your God with your good heart and with your bad heart, right? That's the good impulse and the evil impulse. But now what we're seeing is the good impulse and the evil impulse do not come to the nut, the core that's inside, that is you, and it's not the good or the bad. It's you. It's pure you. And it's pure freedom that you have. And then there are these other forces that you bring to bear on yourself, which could be called a good impulse or a bad impulse, a good character or a bad character. But the you is this very elusive, maybe, but central, undetermined, identity of you. Your essential being is not that way or that way. When we make blessings in the morning, in the old-fashioned way, we used to say, Shelo asani eved, right? You didn't make me into a servant. You didn't make me into a slave, right? And then we said, you didn't make me into a woman, or you made me the way you wanted. If you were a woman, you said, you made me the way you wanted. And we've changed those blessings. And we've changed them and we put them into the positive. And we say that you made me, not that you didn't make me a slave, you made me ben chorin or bat chorin. You made me a person of freedom. And then you say, you made me Yisrael. I don't like the order when we put Yisrael first. I don't think that that's actually true to this idea. Before we're Yisrael or anybody else, we are free. We are essentially, Shasani b'tzalmo, you created me in your image, and that image is an image that is a life force that is free because it's alive. And it's not, it's not torn between the good impulse and the bad, or split between one and the other. It is in its essence, just it is. It's you, it's me. And then we develop the other stuff. And then we develop the character of going one way or the other. But as a result, the wrestling match between the good and evil is not going to be determined by those two wrestlers. The wrestling match between the good impulse and the evil impulse is determined by me. It's determined by you. If the evil impulse has been winning for the last 10 years, again and again and again, there is this, so all right, so guess what? So the good impulse is a loser, period. No, but there's still me. There's still me that can actually turn something around. And we have seen that in human, existence again and again and again. That's the mysterious point that's within every human being. There's no explaining why a person that leads a terrible life and all of a sudden, or even gradually decides to change themselves completely, right? That's that mysterious central core of being that we are endowed with. And then the good impulse and the evil impulse are coupled with us. They're given to us as partners, but the us is still some mysterious, unnameable us. That's what the Zohar is sort of alluding to here. All right, I think we're going to stop here. And I want to wish everybody a Chag Urim Sameach, a very